The thunderous crack of Judge Pearson's gavel echoed through the crowded Willow Creek courthouse like a gunshot, silencing the whispers that had rippled through the room for hours. Willow Fletcher stood alone at the defendant's stand, her spine straight despite the tremors in her hands, as the judge's words sealed her fate. "Banishment," Judge Pearson declared, his weathered face betraying no emotion. "For the crime of speaking falsely against the most respected businessman in our town, you are hereby banished from Willow Creek and all surrounding territories. You have until sundown tomorrow to collect your belongings and leave. Should you return, you will face imprisonment." It was 1878, and the small mining town of Willow Creek, Colorado, had just cast out one of its own. 22-year-old Willow had dared to speak against Gerald Montgomery, the town's wealthiest mine owner, accusing him of cheating the miners of their rightful pay and causing the death of her father through unsafe working conditions. But Montgomery's influence ran deep, his pockets lined the right hands, and his silver tongue had turned the town against her. The courtroom emptied quickly, former friends and neighbors averting their eyes as they passed her. Only Mrs. Parker, the baker's wife who had employed Willow since her father's death, paused briefly. "I'm sorry, child," she whispered, pressing a small pouch of coins into Willow's palm. "It's not much, but it might help you start somewhere new." Willow nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. She'd told the truth. Every word about Montgomery's corruption had been true, but truth wasn't always enough in a town built on silver and secrets. The following day, Willow packed her meager belongings into a single trunk. The small cabin that had been her home now echoed with emptiness, every corner filled with memories of her father, his laughter, his stories of her mother who had passed when Willow was just a child, his unwavering belief in honesty above all else. "Always speak the truth, my little willow tree," he would say, "even when it bends you like the wind." She'd held to that principle, and now it had uprooted her completely. As the sun began its descent, Willow lifted her trunk onto the back of the stagecoach bound for Denver. The driver, a gruff man who'd known her since childhood, couldn't meet her eyes. "Where will you go?" he asked as he secured her trunk. "West," she replied, the only direction that made sense. "As far as this will take me," she patted the small pouch of coins. "That'll get you to Silver Creek." "Small place, but growing. Might be work there." Willow nodded, her throat tight as she took one last look at Willow Creek. The town that had once been home now felt foreign, hostile even. As the stagecoach lurched forward, she made a silent promise to herself. She would never again be silenced, no matter the cost. The journey to Silver Creek took 3 days, each mile putting distance between Willow and her past. The stagecoach rattled through mountainous terrain, the landscape growing wilder with each passing hour. When they finally pulled into the small frontier town, Willow was exhausted but determined. Silver Creek wasn't much to look at: a single main street lined with wooden buildings, a saloon that seemed to be doing the most business, and scattered homes spreading outward like tentative fingers. But it was busy, people moving with purpose, the sounds of construction suggesting growth and opportunity. "End of the line," the driver called, helping her down. Willow stood in the dusty street, trunk at her feet, the reality of her situation settling heavily on her shoulders. She had no home, no job, and only enough money to last a week if she was frugal. "You looking lost, miss," the voice startled her. Willow turned to find a woman in her 40s watching her with shrewd eyes. "I'm looking for work and a place to stay," Willow answered honestly. The woman nodded. "Name's Martha Wilson. I run the boarding house down the street. $5 a week gets you a room and 2 meals a day. I'm Willow Fletcher. I'd be grateful for the room, but I'll need to find work immediately." Martha's gaze was assessing but not unkind. General store might be hiring. The Silver Creek Hotel, too. Town's growing faster than folks can keep up with. By the following morning, Willow had secured both lodging at Martha's boarding house and work at the Silver Creek Hotel. The pay wasn't much, but as a maid, She received meals and the promise of increased wages if she proved herself reliable for 3 weeks. Willow worked from dawn till dusk, scrubbing floors, changing linens, and serving in the dining room when needed. She spoke little, kept to herself, and saved every penny. The weight of banishment still pressed on her, making her cautious about forming new connections. But Silver Creek was different from Willow Creek, bigger, less concerned with a person's past. It was during her 4th week that Willow first encountered him, a tall cowboy with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. He'd strode into the hotel dining room, removing his hat to reveal dark hair that curled slightly at his temples. The other guests had greeted him with nods of respect, and the hotel owner had hurried to shake his hand. "Mr. Hawkins," the owner had said, "good to have you back in Silver Creek." "Good to be back, Mr. Collins," the cowboy had replied, his voice carrying the slight drawl of someone born further south. Willow had been assigned to serve his table, approaching with the coffee pot and a carefully neutral expression. "Coffee, sir?" she'd asked, eyes lowered. "Thank you, miss," he'd replied, then added, "You're new here." It wasn't a question, but Willow answered anyway. "Yes, sir, just under a month now." He'd studied her with those storm-gray eyes. "Hunter Norwood," he'd said, extending his hand. "I own the Twisted N Ranch north of town." "Willow Fletcher," she'd replied, briefly taking his hand before returning to her duties. For the remainder of his meal, Willow had felt his gaze follow her as she moved about the dining room. It wasn't predatory or uncomfortable, more curious, as if he were trying to solve a puzzle. When he'd finally left, leaving a generous tip beneath his coffee cup, Willow had released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She didn't expect to see Hunter Norwood again so soon. But the very next day, he appeared at the hotel, this time seeking her out specifically. "Miss Fletcher," he called as she was coming down the hotel stairs with an armful of laundry. "A moment of your time, please." Willow paused, clutching the linens tighter. "Yes, Mr. Norwood? I understand you've been working here for nearly a month now. That's correct. I've also heard you're efficient, hardworking, and honest to a fault." His expression was unreadable. Willow's heart quickened. Had word of her banishment reached Silver Creek? "I try to be, sir. My ranch is in need of someone to manage the household. My previous housekeeper has moved east to care for her ailing sister. The position includes room and board, plus $20 a month." Willow stared at him, certain she'd misheard. $20 was more than 3 times what she currently earned. "Why me?" she asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly replaced by something like approval. Most would have accepted without question. "I prefer to understand what I'm agreeing to." His lips curved slightly. "Mrs. Collins speaks highly of your work ethic. Martha Wilson says you're quiet but dependable. I need someone who can run a household without constant supervision and who won't shy away from telling me the truth, even when it's inconvenient." The mention of truth made Willow's stomach clench. "And what would my duties include exactly?" "Overseeing the cooking, cleaning, and general management of the main house. I employ a cook, but she'll report to you. There's a small vegetable garden that needs tending, mending to be done, and occasionally you'd help with correspondence." It sounded too good to be true. "And where would I stay?" "There's a comfortable room in the main house with its own entrance. You'd have Sundays off and half days on Wednesdays." Willow hesitated. The offer was tempting, more than tempting, but she'd learned the hard way that things that seemed too perfect often concealed darker truths. "May I have until tomorrow to consider your offer?" she asked, again that flicker of approval. "Of course. I'll stop by in the morning for your answer." That night, Willow barely slept. The position at the Twisted N offered security and better pay, but it also meant isolation and dependence on a man she barely knew. Hunter Norwood seemed respectable enough, and his reputation in town appeared solid, but Willow had seen firsthand how deceptive appearances could be. By morning, she'd made her decision. When Hunter appeared at the hotel, hat in hand, Willow was waiting. "I accept your offer, Mr. Norwood," she said, with one condition. His eyebrows rose slightly. And what might that be? If at any point I find the situation unsuitable, I'd like the freedom to leave without consequences, with a week's pay to see me through until I find new employment. Hunter studied her for a long moment before nodding. Agreed, Miss Fletcher, though I hope it won't come to that. When can you start? I've already spoken with Mr. Collins. I can leave today if that suits. It suits just fine. I'll help you with your belongings. The journey to the Twisted End took nearly 2 hours by wagon. As they traveled, Hunter pointed out landmarks and shared bits of the ranch's history. Founded by his father after the war, the Twisted End had started small but now sprawled over several thousand acres, raising cattle and horses renowned throughout the territory. And your family? Willow ventured, curiosity overcoming her usual reserve. Are they also at the ranch? A shadow crossed Hunter's face. My father passed 3 years ago. My mother lives in Denver now with my sister and her husband. I have a younger brother who's off at school back east. I'm sorry about your father, Willow said quietly. Thank you. He was a good man, built all this from nothing. Hunter's gaze swept over the landscape with pride tinged with something deeper, perhaps grief, perhaps responsibility. As they crested a hill, the Twisted End came into view. Willow's breath caught in her throat. The main house was a substantial 2-story structure built of timber and stone, with a wide porch wrapping around the front. Several outbuildings surrounded it, a barn, bunkhouses, corrals, and what looked like a smithy. In the distance, cattle grazed on lush pasture. It's beautiful, Willow murmured. It's home, Hunter replied simply, but the affection in his voice was unmistakable. As they approached, several ranch hands called out greetings and a woman emerged from the main house, wiping her hands on her apron. That's Rosa, Hunter explained. Best cook in the territory, been with us since I was a boy. Rosa greeted them warmly, her eyes quickly assessing Willow. So this is our new housekeeper. About time. Place has been falling apart without someone to keep it in order. Willow smiled tentatively. I'll do my best. That's all anyone can ask, Rosa replied, then turned to Hunter. I've prepared the blue room for her as you requested. Thank you, Rosa. Would you show Miss Fletcher around while I see to the horses? Of course. Come, child, let me show you your new home. The blue room, as it turned out, was a spacious chamber on the first floor with its own entrance from the side of the house. It was simply but comfortably furnished with a bed, dresser, washstand, and a small writing desk beneath a window overlooking the garden. The walls were painted a soft blue that gave the room its name. This is lovely, Willow said, genuinely surprised by the accommodations. Mr. Norwood insisted you have a proper room, not some servants' quarters, Rosa explained. He values those who work for him. The tour continued through the kitchen, dining room, parlor, and study on the first floor, then upstairs to the 4 bedrooms Hunter's master suite, 2 guest rooms, and a smaller room used for storage. Throughout, Rosa explained the routines of the household and Willow's expected duties. It's a lot to take in, Rosa acknowledged as they returned to the kitchen. But you'll get the hang of it, and don't worry about making mistakes. Mr. Norwood is fair-minded, Willow nodded, trying to memorize everything. And the other staff, you mentioned ranch hands. About 10 regular hands, more during roundup. They have their own quarters and meals in the bunkhouse, though sometimes Mr. Norwood invites the foreman, Jake, to dine at the main house. There's also Miguel, who tends the horses, and his son Carlos, who helps with odd jobs. You won't have to worry about them much, except when they track mud into the house. Rosa smiled warmly. Now let's get you settled. Dinner is at 6 sharp. That first night, Willow dined alone in her room, exhausted from the day's events. The following morning, she rose with the sun, determined to prove herself worthy of the trust Hunter had placed in her. The days quickly fell into a rhythm. Willow would rise early, help Rosa prepare breakfast, then spend the day managing the household, overseeing the laundry, tending the garden, making sure supplies were ordered, and ensuring the house remained clean and organized. Hunter was often away during the day, working with the cattle or horses, dealing with business in town, or checking the far reaches of his property. But he always returned for dinner, and it was during these evening meals that Willow began to know him better. Hunter was not a man of many words, but when he spoke, his observations were thoughtful and often laced with dry humor. He asked Willow about her day, listened attentively to her reports on household matters, and occasionally shared stories of his own experiences. Never once did he treat her as a servant, despite her position. One evening, about 3 weeks into her employment, Hunter returned later than usual, his expression troubled. Willow had kept dinner warm, and as she served him, she noticed the tension in his shoulders. "Is everything all right, Mr. Norwood?" she asked, setting a plate before him. He looked up, seemingly surprised by her concern. "Just business matters, Miss Fletcher. Nothing for you to worry about, of course." Willow turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Actually, perhaps you could offer a different perspective." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Would you join me? Have you eaten?" Startled, Willow hesitated. "I've eaten with Rosa in the kitchen, but I'm happy to sit with you if you'd like company. Please." Willow sat, folding her hands in her lap. "How can I help?" Hunter studied her for a moment. "You strike me as someone who values honesty, Miss Fletcher." The observation hit uncomfortably close to home. "I try to be truthful, yes, even when it's difficult. Even when others might prefer a more diplomatic approach." Willow felt a chill run down her spine, memories of her banishment threatening to surface. "Truth has its costs," she said carefully. "I've learned that lesson well." Something in her tone must have revealed more than she intended, for Hunter's gaze sharpened. "It sounds like there's a story there. Nothing worth telling." Willow forced a smile. "You mentioned business matters." Hunter allowed the deflection, though his eyes suggested he hadn't missed her discomfort. "I've been offered a partnership with a man named Montgomery, Gerald Montgomery. He owns several silver mines near Willow Creek and wants to expand into cattle." Willow froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. Gerald Montgomery, the very man whose corruption she had exposed, who had engineered her banishment. "Are you all right, Miss Fletcher? You've gone pale." "I'm fine," she managed, though her voice sounded strained even to her own ears. "Please continue." Hunter frowned but proceeded. "Montgomery is offering a substantial investment enough to expand our breeding program significantly, but something about him doesn't sit right with me. Jake met him in town last week and said the same." What sort of feeling?" Willow asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. "Like a man who says one thing but means another. His reputation seems solid enough, but—" Hunter shrugged. "I trust my instincts." "Good instincts are valuable," Willow said softly. "Have you heard of him, Montgomery?" The moment of decision arrived like a thunderclap. Willow could lie, protect herself from potential discovery, or she could tell the truth and risk everything again. "Yes," she finally said, meeting Hunter's eyes directly. "I know of Gerald Montgomery." Hunter waited, sensing there was more. "He owned the largest mine in Willow Creek, where I lived before coming to Silver Creek." The words came slowly at first, then faster as the dam broke. "My father worked in that mine. Montgomery cut corners on safety to increase profits. A section collapsed. My father and 3 others died." Hunter's expression darkened with sympathy. "I'm sorry, Willow." It was the first time he'd used her given name, but Willow barely registered it as the rest of the story poured out. "I discovered ledgers proving Montgomery had been warned about the unsafe conditions. And worse, he'd been cheating the miners of their rightful pay for years. I brought the evidence to the town council." Willow's hands clenched in her lap. "Montgomery had friends in high places. He claimed I'd falsified the documents out of grief and bitterness. No one would stand against him, not even those who knew the truth." "What happened?" Hunter asked quietly. "I was charged with slander and forgery. The judge gave me a choice: retract my accusations and apologize publicly or face banishment." Willow lifted her chin, a flash of defiance in her eyes. "I refused to retract the truth, so I was banished, forbidden to return under penalty of imprisonment." Silence fell between them. Willow waited for the judgment, the disbelief, the dismissal that had become so familiar in Willow Creek. Instead, Hunter reached across the table and covered her hand with his own. "You chose honesty over security," he said, his voice low and fierce. "That takes rare courage." Willow stared at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt. "You believe me, just like that?" "I've known you for nearly a month now, Miss Fletcher. You're meticulous, responsible, and forthright in all your dealings. I can't imagine you'd fabricate such serious accusations." His expression hardened. "And it confirms my suspicions about Montgomery." Relief washed over Willow, so powerful she felt momentarily light-headed. "Then you won't partner with him?" "Not a chance in hell," Hunter said firmly. "And I'll make sure other ranchers in the area know to be cautious as well." Willow withdrew her hand, suddenly aware of how improper their contact was. "Thank you for believing me, not many would." "Their loss," Hunter said simply. He hesitated, then added, "I hope you know you have a place here for as long as you wish, Miss Fletcher. Your honesty is valued at the Twisted N." That night, Willow lay awake long after she should have been asleep, replaying the conversation with Hunter. For the first time since her banishment, someone had heard her truth and believed her without question. The relief was immense, but it brought with it a new concern. The growing warmth she felt toward Hunter Norwood was decidedly improper for a housekeeper to feel toward her employer. Over the following weeks, Willow tried to maintain a professional distance, but it became increasingly difficult. Hunter sought her opinion on matters beyond the household, invited her to join him for meals regularly, and brought her books from his trips to Denver. For his part, Hunter seemed equally drawn to her, finding reasons to be around the house more often than before, lingering in conversations, his eyes following her when he thought she wouldn't notice. The turning point came in late autumn, nearly 4 months after Willow's arrival at the Twisted N. A severe early snowstorm had descended upon the region, forcing Hunter and 2 of his hands to spend the night in the lined shack on the far northern boundary of the ranch. When they hadn't returned by the following evening, Willow had been beside herself with worry. "They know what they're doing," Rosa had assured her, though concern lined her own face. "Mr. Norwood has weathered worse storms than this." But as the second night fell with no sign of Hunter, Willow couldn't sleep. She paced her room, then the kitchen, then finally bundled up and stepped onto the porch, scanning the darkness as if she could will him to appear. The snow had stopped, leaving behind a pristine white landscape under a clear, star-filled sky. The cold bit at her cheeks as Willow wrapped her shawl tighter and continued her vigil. She wasn't sure how long she'd been standing there when she heard the distant sound of hoofbeats crunching through snow. Squinting into the darkness, Willow made out 3 figures on horseback approaching the ranch. "Hunter," she breathed, relief flooding through her. Without thinking, Willow rushed down the porch steps, heedless of the snow soaking her shoes and the hem of her dress. As the riders drew closer, she could make out Hunter in the lead, his familiar broad-shouldered silhouette unmistakable even in the dim light. When he saw her, Hunter urged his horse forward, closing the distance between them quickly. He dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots hitting the snow with a soft crunch. "Willow, what are you doing out here? It's freezing." "You're late," she said, the words coming out more accusatory than she'd intended. "We were worried." His expression softened. The North Pass was blocked. "We had to take the long way around." He studied her face, taking in the dark circles under her eyes. "Have you been waiting up for us?" "Someone had to keep watch," she replied, trying for dignity despite her chattering teeth. Hunter turned to the 2 ranch hands who had caught up. "Go on to the bunkhouse. Get warmed up. We'll deal with the horses tomorrow." The men nodded, leading their mounts toward the barn. Hunter returned his attention to Willow, noticing how she trembled in the cold. Without a word, he shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. The warmth of his body lingered in the fabric, enveloping her. "You shouldn't have worried," he said softly. "Well, I did." Willow clutched the coat around her. "The whole household did." "The whole household is asleep from the looks of it," Hunter's eyes crinkled at the corners. Except for you. Rosa wanted to stay up too, but she's not as young as she used to be. I told her I'd keep watch, and so you have. Hunter's voice was gentle. He reached out, brushing a snowflake from her hair. The touch, brief as it was, sent warmth spreading through Willow that had nothing to do with his coat. Let's get you inside before you catch your death. As they walked toward the house, Hunter kept his hand at the small of her back, a protective gesture that seemed entirely natural. In the kitchen, Willow insisted on heating coffee while Hunter shed his snow-covered boots and sat at the table. You should be the one being tended to, she protested as she set a steaming mug before him. You're the one who's been out in the storm. I'm accustomed to rough weather, Hunter replied, watching as she moved about the kitchen. What I'm not accustomed to is having someone wait up for me, worried for my safety. Willow paused, suddenly self-conscious. It's my job to look after the household. You're part of that responsibility. Is that all it is, responsibility? The question hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. Willow felt her cheeks warm and she busied herself with wiping down the already clean counter. Willow, Hunter said, his voice low. Look at me. Slowly, Willow turned to face him. In the soft lantern light, his features seemed more defined, the strong line of his jaw, the slight cleft in his chin, the intelligence in his gray eyes. These past months, he continued, you've become more than just my housekeeper. You must know that. Willow's heart thundered in her chest. Mr. Norwood, Hunter, he corrected gently. After tonight, I think we're well past formalities. Hunter, she amended, the name feeling intimate on her tongue. Whatever you're thinking, it's not proper. I work for you. Arrangements can be changed. He set down his coffee and stood, moving toward her with deliberate steps. If propriety is your only objection. It's not just propriety, Willow protested weakly, even as he drew closer. There's your position in the community to consider. A man like you shouldn't be involved with someone who was banished from her home, who has no family, no connections, a woman of uncompromising honesty and courage. Hunter was standing before her now, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. A woman who faces every challenge with dignity and grace, who transforms a house into a home with her presence alone. Willow shook her head, fighting against the hope blooming in her chest. You idealize me. I see you, Willow Fletcher. Hunter reached out, his calloused fingers gentle as they tilted her chin up. I see all of you, and I admire what I see. The tenderness in his gaze undid her last defenses. I've been afraid, she confessed in a whisper, afraid to trust, afraid to hope for anything beyond what I have now. I know, his thumb brushed her cheekbone, but sometimes the risk is worth taking. When his lips met hers, Willow felt as though something long dormant within her had suddenly awakened. The kiss was gentle at first, a question, then deepened as she responded. Her hands found their way to his shoulders, feeling the solid strength of him beneath her fingertips. When they finally parted, Willow was breathless, her world tilted on its axis. Hunter's forehead rested against hers, his breathing as uneven as her own. I've wanted to do that since the day you told me about Montgomery, he murmured. When you chose truth, regardless of the cost. Why? Hunter smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Because your honesty is precious to me, rare as gold and twice as valuable. In a world where most people bend the truth to suit themselves, you stand straight and true. Even when it costs me everything, Willow asked, remembering her banishment. Not everything, Hunter countered. It led you here to the twisted end to me. His expression grew serious. I'm not asking for immediate decisions, Willow. Take all the time you need. But know this, I want you in my life not as my employee, but as my partner. The days that followed were a delicate dance of changing dynamics. To the outside world, nothing appeared different. Willow continued her duties as housekeeper, and Hunter managed the ranch. But in private moments, they explored this new terrain between them with tentative joy. Rosa, sharp-eyed and wise, noticed the shift immediately but said nothing beyond a knowing smile when she caught Willow humming as she worked or Hunter lingering in the kitchen longer than necessary. 3 weeks after their first kiss, Hunter rode into town and returned with a letter that set the ranch abuzz with activity. His mother and sister would be visiting from Denver for Christmas, he announced, along with his brother who was returning from school in the East. "They'll want to meet you," he told Willow as they sat together in the study that evening. "Properly meet you, not as the housekeeper." Anxiety flickered across Willow's face. "What will they think, your mother especially?" Hunter took her hand. "My mother is a practical woman who values happiness above convention, and she'll adore you once she knows you." He hesitated. "There's something else I wanted to discuss with you before they arrive." "What is it?" Hunter reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Willow's breath caught as he opened it, revealing a delicate gold ring set with a single pearl surrounded by tiny diamonds. "It was my grandmother's," Hunter explained, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. "My father gave it to my mother when he proposed, and she passed it to me before she left for Denver." "Hunter," Willow whispered, staring at the ring. "I know it's fast," he continued quickly. "Too fast, perhaps, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." He took her hand. "Willow Fletcher, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Not immediately, we can have as long an engagement as you wish, but I want you to know my intentions are serious and true." Tears welled in Willow's eyes. "You want to marry me, even knowing my past, especially knowing your past." Hunter's gaze was steady. "Your honesty is my crown, Willow, the finest quality a person can possess. I would be proud to call you my wife." For a long moment, Willow couldn't speak past the emotion closing her throat. Then, with a tremulous smile, she extended her left hand. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will marry you." Hunter's face lit with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. When he kissed her, it was a promise of trust, of respect, and of a love built on the foundation of truth. The Christmas of 1878 brought more joy than Willow could have imagined possible just 1 year earlier. Hunter's family embraced her with genuine warmth, his mother declaring that she'd never seen Hunter so content, and his siblings welcoming her as one of their own. On Christmas Eve, before the entire household, Hunter and Willow announced their engagement. Champagne flowed freely as ranch hands and family members alike offered congratulations. Later, as they stood together on the porch watching snow drift gently from the night sky, Willow marveled at the journey that had brought her here. "From banishment to betrothal," she murmured, leaning against Hunter's strong shoulder. "I never imagined such a turn in my fortunes." "Not fortune," Hunter corrected, wrapping his arm around her waist. "Justice. You deserved better than what Willow Creek gave you, and somehow, against all odds, you found your way to where you were meant to be." "With you," Willow said, looking up at him with love shining in her eyes. "With me," he agreed, and kissed her beneath the stars. They were married in the spring of 1879, when wildflowers carpeted the meadows of the Twisted N. The ceremony was held on the ranch with Hunter's family, the ranch hands, and new friends from Silver Creek in attendance. Willow wore a gown of ivory satin with pearls at her throat, a wedding gift from Hunter's mother, and carried wildflowers gathered that morning from the meadow. As they exchanged vows beneath an arch of twisted branches that echoed the ranch's name, Willow felt the final weight of her banishment lift from her shoulders. The truth that had once cost her a home had ultimately led her to a far greater one, not just a place, but a person who valued her most essential self. "I promise to honor your honesty always," Hunter vowed as he slipped a gold band onto her finger to join her engagement ring. "To cherish your courage, to protect your gentle heart, and to love you faithfully all the days of my life." "And I promise to stand by you in truth and in love," Willow replied, her voice steady with certainty. "To face whatever comes with the same honesty that brought us together, and to make our home a place where truth is always valued above all else." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the cheers from the assembled guests seemed to echo across the vast Colorado landscape, carrying their joy to the distant mountains and beyond. That night, As stars appeared in the velvet sky above the twisted N, Hunter and Willow stood on the porch of what was now truly their home. Behind them, the sounds of celebration continued, music and laughter flowing from the barn where tables had been set for the wedding feast. "Mrs. Norwood," Hunter said, testing the name with evident pleasure. "How does it feel?" Willow smiled up at him, her heart so full she thought it might overflow. "Like coming home after a very long journey." "Welcome home, then," he murmured, drawing her into his arms, "now and forever." And as his lips met hers, Willow knew with absolute certainty that the truth, with all its costs and consequences, had led her exactly where she belonged.